Okay, I'll try one other person. It's fine. Thanks, sponsor. Vuyelwa.
Hi, Carl.
Hi there.
How
How
are
have you?
you?
I'm all good, and you, ma'am?
I'm also all good. Can't complain.
Nice. How have you found the program so far?
It's quite interesting. I'm learning a lot as much as Sylvester has alluded earlier on. I think we're all experiencing the very same challenges. It's quite overwhelming. However, it is interesting on the other side.
Mm, that is
Mm,
interesting. That's good. I'm glad that you feel like you've learned stuff from the program.
yes.
This is also one of the very first programs where we used multiple facilitators on it. So I hope that contributed to the experience. It's very different for us, and the whole idea is to do things differently, to find new pathways for or new learning journeys for learners.
Yes. And I'm quite learning a lot, so to say.
Mm. I'm
I
happy to
am.
hear that. I'm happy
Yes.
to hear that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so
Okay,
much, Carl.
no problem. So what I want to do before we jump into Module 7, for those of us who don't know, okay, Module 7 is the last module for the BA program. So for those of us who've made it this far, a little bit of this thing's not working. Apologies. Some confetti. Okay, so well done, well done. You can give yourselves a round of applause for making it this far. So Module 7 is the last formative and summative you'll deal with. And then what you will do is a FISA, Final Integrated Summative Assessment. Now with the FISA, I'm supposed to give it to you as an examination or test. And I normally do, especially with face-to-face learners, but because we're all employed learners, we're working, I don't want to give it to you in the form of a test. So I will give it to you as another assignment. And then, that will be the end of your program. But what I wanted to say about the visa is you will only commence with this visa next year towards the beginning of Feb. So if there are any outstanding assignments or if there's any gaps in your portfolio and the work you've done, the gap, the break we're going on after Module 7 until next year is a good time to come back and fix and fill the gaps. And it will also give my team and I some time to catch up with the marking. So I was thinking it's the perfect opportunity to do so. And then I also wanted to let learners know that we have started building your portfolios. So we've put all the framework there for your portfolios. We're just putting work in now. So we basically build a framework, and then your formative summatives get slotted in, and then your FISA will go right at the end. So we have started with that. We have so this group consists of 4 smaller groups within it. And we've dealt with 3 out of the 4 groups. We've got 1 more to go, and then it should be all right. So just a heads up, we have been thinking about the exit. We've been planning towards it. We want to make sure that it's seamless, that it's smooth, that the formalized assessment is simplified and easy to do. So we just are thinking forward, and we are trying to make sure that you guys do get certified in a timely manner. So with that being said, I also want to say that you should be certified by mid next year. And that's just because EMs don't happen all the time. We have to have multiple groups ready for an external verification. So they won't, we're not really allowed to just schedule for one group. So once your group is ready, we might wait for a few other groups, and then we'll push all of them out. But yeah, so just a heads up in terms of how that happens. And then in the previous session, we did mention that all learners who reach the end of the FISA, submitted and get their grades, will receive a letter just stating that they have completed this program. They're just waiting for certification, and the letter will come from me. Okay, so that might help if you want to include it, or if you need proof that you've done this. Okay. With that being said, I'm gonna then commence with Module 7. So let us do this. This is the last session for Module 7, the Saturday one. It's always the most difficult one, I find. But yeah, let's do it. So Module 7 is all about integration or integrated maintenance management and team development in manufacturing operations. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't go too far away from the manufacturing operations because it is in the unit standard title. So I was literally forced to include those components. But the thing you'll notice about maintenance management and even team development is that a lot of these concepts are relevant, regardless of whether you're in the manufacturing space or not. So a lot of what is there is still applicable, is still relevant. And if you just look at some of the leading theories in manufacturing operations, so like just in time or Kaizen, all these lean approaches that are used in manufacturing, some of them were even developed by Toyota. All of these things are still relevant and are still very much applicable in spaces that are not manufacturing operations. So even if you think that this might not be of value because you're not in the space of manufacturing operations, you'll see that there are things we'll talk about today that are applicable and that you haven't thought about before. You haven't gone that deep, or you haven't dug that deep behind the things that are happening at your organization. So that's what Module 7 is all about. It is literally made up of 2 unit standards, so it's not too big. It's not, it's nice and simple. What we will do is we'll cover the first unit standard and then we'll take a bit of a break and we'll come back and we'll wrap up with the other one. Okay, let us start with the first one. The first module, or the first unit standard, apologies, is 9895, and it's all about coordinates, predictive, and preventative maintenance. And then what you'll see, we'll explore the different types of maintenance. Maintenance is not just a once-off term, and a lot of people have this misconception about it. There's a lot more depth to planning and organizing your maintenance. And it's very important that we understand it in the space of business advisory, because sometimes you'll find that a lot of the breakdowns that occur within organizations would be in the space of lack of maintenance or poor maintenance of the equipment or the things, the assets that the organizations have. So as a business advisor, it's very important that we understand maintenance because it might be a sore point for an organization. And if we can advise effectively to improve maintenance practices, then we're able to do our jobs effectively as a business advisor. And that's what this has all been about being a good business advisor, providing organizations with the best possible advice as a consultant to the organization. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We'll start off with a bit of a quote. So this quote's from Benjamin Franklin, who says that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And this quote is really good. It really captures what we're trying to talk about in the space of this module. It just says that you can save a lot of time and effort and money just by being preventative. And you can save an organization from a lot of pain, a lot of a lot of setback just by doing what you need to do to avoid the negatives. And preventative measures against breakdowns are very important. That's what this is all about. So it's just an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's important. Okay, let us go into the content. So just an introduction in the world of industry, and again, we don't have to just focus on manufacturing, but we're talking about industry as a whole on the larger scale. Maintenance is the backbone of operational efficiency, and what we're saying with the statement is that it's a core component that holds it all together. If we don't do any maintenance at all, things break down, things don't last. And if you continue reading, you'll see that it's the process that ensures physical assets, your machines, your equipment, your infrastructure remains at peak condition. Sorry. You'll see that we all have machines at the workplace. We all have some sort of equipment that is there. We all have infrastructure. So you all have a building, that you work at. These things need to be maintained. If they're not maintained, you have wear and tear, and then they're no longer viable or they're no longer usable for the purpose that you've initially gotten them. So what you will see is that there are many proactive strategies that you can use to prevent breakdowns and optimize performance to ultimately save organizations time and money. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the different strategies that you can apply or that you can start using within organizations to minimize these interruptions and breakdowns. Okay, so these are the different types of maintenance, and this is where we go beyond just the title of maintenance. We're digging a bit deeper. So you'll see that the first one is reactive maintenance, and this is often referred to as the firefighting approach, which is dealing with problems as they arrive. this approach can often be really expensive and will disrupt an organization's operations. So it's not always the best way to deal with maintenance. But this is often the way that most organizations approach it, is they wait for things to break before they deal with it. Now, just by show of hands or giving me a thumbs up, how many of us have worked in an organization, whether it be governmental or not? How many of us have worked in a space where they wait for things to break before they'll do anything about it? I can see we've immediately got reactions, eh? It's like we're sitting on the button, eh? That is brilliant. Yeah, so that's the problem. Is a lot of organizations are just waiting for the things to break. You can't wait. You need to deal with it when you have symptoms of the problem. And this kind of does allude back to our RCA model. Who remembers the RCA model? RCA. I hope I'm saying it properly. Sometimes my accent gets so thick that it sounds like I'm saying something else. But it's RCA. Does anyone remember the model? Okay. It's quite simple. I'm sure you. Okay, there we go. Sylvester remembers. What's happening, Sylvester? Can you tell us about it? Sylvester, do you want to talk to the RS? Yeah, there we go.
Yes, I'm saying I think something to do with the root cause of problems.
Root cause analysis, 100%.
Yes,
Yeah. So if you go to the RCA model, it just says to you that when you're dealing with problems, on the surface, you're going to see a lot of symptoms, and you have to you have to dig deeper to find the real problem. And when you look at the RCA model, you can often apply it to maintenance because you'll see symptoms of the problem. If you see symptoms, you can start, addressing it. You know that there's something wrong here in this space. I need to do something. Action is required. And that's what this is about. Okay, we don't want to adopt a firefighting approach because when you adopt the firefighting approach, you're acting out of urgency. You're acting because it's an emergency. It's not viable. It's not good for business. Okay. I just want to see. We have a few more people that have hopped on. For those of us who just hopped on, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Let's have a look. Okay, cool. Then we have preventative maintenance. So this involves scheduled tasks like inspections, cleaning, part replacement and it's based on timed intervals. Now, the problem with preventative maintenance is that it doesn't always cover specific breakdowns. It doesn't cover everything, or it might not cover things that are unplanned for. So, for example, if you know a machine might require like an oil or some sort of cleaning, you can schedule that every 4 months, and that's fine. You won't have to worry about that. But what if something else happens to the machine? Something that's not in that space of oil replacement or cleaning, then then your preventative maintenance is kind of pointless in that regard. I mean, the preventative maintenance will avoid typical problems or things that are expected to go wrong, but it won't help you with the unexpected. So that's important to note. So do have your preventative maintenance, but just know that it's not going to address specific needs of the equipment at any time. Okay. And then we have our predictive maintenance. And this is where we get very clever about it. We start collecting data from the machines. And we use the data that we've collected, to give us a real-time prediction as to when the maintenance will actually be needed. And with this approach, you're working a lot smarter. You're not working so hard. So if you do the preventative maintenance, you're going to do maintenance whether the machine needs it or not. But with preventative maintenance, you're going to do it whether it needs it or not. With predictive, you're going to do it exactly when it needs it. And it's the smart way of approaching it. It is a lot more technical. It would require a little bit of expertise with data and data management. But yeah, that's basically the different types of maintenance. Okay. I'm going to keep moving. Let me just hit the, there we go. So just a little bit of, I wanted to provide the group with models that you can use or you can think about when you're dealing with the different maintenance types. So when we have predictive maintenance, you'll see that you will look at the following components. So you'll look at revenue recovery. So remember, everything you do in the space of maintenance will cost money. Nothing is ever going to be free, but you can try and work out how much the machine can produce for you and how much you can recoup from the cost of maintenance. You also deal with smart replacement, so replacing key components or parts before they really break down. You will also have your planned maintenance reduction, so you will probably have less planned maintenance, and you'll be using your tools to help you to help you see where you need to actually do the maintenance. It does require IoT, so Internet of Things. Think about 4IR. That's where this comes from. What IoT really is about. It's about equipping real, so living or real world machinery with data collection tools. So let's just say data collection modules that will extract data from the machine. And we will talk a bit more about that in a couple slides down the road. But it literally, you equip a machine with a tool that can collect data from it, and then you can watch it in real time as it pulls the data, and then you can make decisions based on that data that it's pulling or extracting. Okay. You also have service loss reduction. So how can you keep the machine operating for longer durations with less breakdowns? Think about how we had problems in South Africa with driver's licenses. So if there's only one machine that prints out those driver's licenses, and when that machine goes down, the whole country can't, nobody can get driver's licenses. It's a problem. So it's a serious problem. But if they just adopted some of the practices we're talking about now, they can really curtail or hinder the service loss time, or the time lost due to it being broken down. And then you also have risk reduction. So there are many, many risks associated with different equipment, different machineries. So you can literally tackle some of those issues by using predictive maintenance. You have your workforce improvement. So using predictive maintenance means that you have to upskill and train staff members in it. So they have to become become efficient in the practice itself, which means they can grow and upskill by just adopting this approach to maintenance. And then also your asset availability, which is something we've spoken about a lot. It's just making sure that your assets are available when you need them, as opposed to having to deal with all these things before you can actually use it. Okay, let us move to the next model I have. This is more for preventative maintenance. And you'll see that when you adopt the practice of preventative maintenance, you'll see that it avoids consequence of components or system failure. You'll see that it improves the reliability and predictability of your machines. It also allows there to be trained experts on proper procedure and techniques. So you can bring in experts that will help you with your maintenance. It also means that you replace your components before they fail, as opposed to waiting for them to fail. So think about how we deal with our vehicles. Vehicles need to be serviced almost once a year. Some other vehicles would be even more frequent. But we don't just do it because things break down. We do it because it's preventative. We change the oil. You might have to replace tires. You don't wait for things to completely wear down, or for the car to be smoking up before you start dealing with things such as an oil or water, an oil change, or adding water to, or even coolant to the engine, whatever it might be. But yeah, that's the big thing. If you want to think about preventative maintenance, think about what we do for vehicles. Is everything you do in the space of maintenance for a car is preventative. Okay. If you are someone who's leaving it to the end and allowing your car to completely wear down before you do anything about it, that poor vehicle. Okay, and then finally, it's clean and restores components before performance degrades. So again, going back to the vehicle, if something goes wrong in the vehicle, it will noticeably affect the performance of the entire vehicle. And that's what you're trying to avoid, is because you don't want things to completely wear and tear and break down before. So I'll give you an example. In my car, I had a bit of a problem, and this is a good example because wasn't planned for. So normally the car goes for service once a year, and those those oil changes and those yearly services are there to ensure that the engine keeps running efficiently, that it doesn't perform less because it's not being serviced correctly. But so a couple months back, I had a problem with it. I'd noticed that every 3 or 4 weeks I had to put coolant in, and this kept going on for about a month and a half. And eventually, because I'm an animal, I'm a creature of habit. So I kept going to the same garage, and eventually the guy at the garage said to me, you're putting too much coolant in the engine. Like it's a once a year, maybe even less kind of situation. So it's like you need to get it checked out. So I took it to the garage, and they noticed that the pipe that the coolant travels through was cracked, and it's dripping onto like a drip tray that gets hot because of the engine. So it steams up, and you don't really see any puddles as a result. So my car didn't look like it was leaking anything, but it was actually leaking coolant. So, and that's one of those things that you can't really plan for. It's unpredicted, but and your preventative maintenance won't save you from it. But that's why you need to be very dynamic in the approach of maintenance. You can't just rely on one approach to deal with all the needs you might have for a machine or equipment. Okay, sorry, I'm getting us. I'm going into like a lot of anecdotal stories about dealing with maintenance, but I hope it helps. I hope it gets you thinking about it. The other thing I'd like to ask the group is, how many of us have thought about the maintenance that goes on at the workplaces we work at, or at our place we go to for the daily jobs? How many of us have really thought about that? Because I discussed this in the previous session, and a lot of people said that they don't really think about it. Okay, just give me a thumbs up or raise your hand if it's something that you've never thought about before or you seldomly think about. Okay, it seems like everyone in the session today thinks about it every day. Brilliant. That should help, should make it easier. Okay, cool. I'm gonna keep going then because it is okay, cool. I also see that they've been posting the attendance registers in the chat. So if you can also just please complete that. It does help us a lot with our reporting on your attendance. So if you don't complete it, we mark you absent. So just think about that and make sure that you've completed a register. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep going then. And this is the final model I will discuss or show you in the space of reactive, preventative, and predictive maintenance. And this one is rather interesting. But what this model is aimed at showing you how the different approaches to maintenance can affect cost. Okay. So what you'll see is if you go into the reactive maintenance, remember that's our firefighting approach, you'll see that your costs are really high. If you look at this curve is there and it represents costs. It literally even says repair costs. It costs you a lot more to be a firefighter than what it is to be more predictive or more preventative. Okay, when you're doing preventative maintenance, it can still be expensive, but it does kind of it finds a balance. You know, it's not going to be something that's always expensive. And then if you do predictive maintenance, you're going to just be doing maintenance where you need them, but it's more strategic because you have the Internet of Things technology telling you when and where it needs to take place. So you're not going to do maintenance if it's not really necessary for the machine. Okay, and then what you'll see is we have this dotted line, and this dotted line just basically says that your maintenance costs start to even out over a period of time. So if you don't adopt the firefighting approach, this reactive maintenance, and you follow either preventative or predictive maintenance, you'll find that you will do the maintenance regardless of whether you want to. But if you follow a strategic approach to it, it will even, it balances out. It follows, it becomes a part of your normal costs. It's not going to be a surprising spike. It's just going to be, oh, we pay this every 4 months, and it's quite normalized. It's expected. It's not, it's not going to be a high or big bill at some random point because the machine is completely broken down. Okay, and that's what this is all about. It's just talking about the costs and looking at it from a reactive, preventative, and predictive lens or perspective. Okay, I hope this makes sense. I hope it does help you when you address some of the questions. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, and the key focus behind this unit standard, which is 9895, is to guide the art of maintenance management. It's all about coordinating the power of both predictive and preventative strategies. So you'll see that we're not even focusing on reactive. It's not something that we recommend adopting. It's not a good practice in the space of maintenance management. So you'll see that from this point onwards, we don't talk about reactive maintenance because that's not what this is about. We don't want to teach you to be firefighters. We want you to be strategic about it. You must be smart about how you're taking care of the assets or equipment of an organization. So it's all about being strategic in the space of predictive and preventative maintenance and those strategies. Okay, what you want to do is you want to combine a mix of these two approaches. You can't just select one. And if you think back to my previous anecdote about the vehicle, you can do all the preventative maintenance you want. There will be situations where the maintenance you're doing is just not enough. Or there's going to be something that occurs that's outside of the scope of your annual services or your annual maintenance. So that's very important to note. I just want to see something. There is, I can see that there's something happening in the chat. Yeah, cool. So let's move to the next slide. So just a couple of benefits from predictive and preventative maintenance. So just imagine you're in a workplace where unexpected breakdowns are rare, and equipment lasts a lot longer than what it should. But the team starts becoming confident, in the machines that they're using. That is the potential of proactive maintenance. So what happens when you adopt the preventive and predictive maintenance, you reduce downtime, which means you're minimizing unplanned disruptions, and you can keep operations running smoothly. And that's important. That's the key point, is you want to make sure you minimize disruptions and you allow people to do what they need to do so that they can generate profit for the organization. And then also, by adopting predictive and preventative maintenance, you're able to increase the lifespan of a lot of the assets and equipment that is used, which means you get the most out of your investment into these machines. Okay. And then also you're able to improve safety. So remember that when things break down, there are risks, or there is a risk of an accident happening. It could create an unsafe situation for an individual. Think about what happens when a vehicle breaks down and you're in it. It's an opportunity for an accident to occur. And that's something we want to try and avoid. So by having predictive and preventative maintenance, you're able to improve the safety of your workplace. The other thing is you have cost savings. So just think back to the previous module, sorry, the previous slide, apologies, where we spoke about the costs. That's the kind of savings you could plan for in the space of predictive and preventative maintenance. And then you also have the opportunity for enhanced productivity. So you can keep the equipment operating at its best, and you can lead to greater efficiency, which means you're getting more output from these machines, which is what we're looking for. We're trying to get the most out of our machines, but we're also trying to make sure that we minimize downtime, and we are raking in, or that the margin between cost of generating income and income generated must be as great as possible. And the only way to really do that is to optimize the machines you're using, to further create a bigger bridge between what it costs to run the organization and what the profits are. Okay. Then when we take it a step further, we talk about predictive maintenance techniques, which is very cool. You'll see that this is where we go back to the Internet of Things, and it does kind of touch on concepts that would typically be found in larger factories or in manufacturing. But this is just included because of the unit standard title. But you'll find that it is really interesting regardless, and it might not be applicable to us in a corporate space, but it does help to know these things regardless. There's nothing wrong with adopting transdisciplinary approaches where you take something that's used in one industry and apply it in another. Okay, so predictive maintenance is like giving your equipment regular health checkups. It involves using specialized tools and techniques to monitor various parameters such as vibration, temperature, and lubrication conditions. Okay, by analyzing the data, you can identify potential issues before they escalate to major failures. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to be as predictive as possible and preventative, so that we're avoiding these major failures or major breakdowns. So the first one is you could do is a vibration analysis. So just like a doctor listens to heartbeat, you can listen to the sounds that machines make. And sometimes this is often easy to do. If you look at like pumps. I think pool pumps. That's the correct word. If you listen to pool pumps when they're running abnormally, you can hear it. And the same could be said for any machine. If there's something wrong with it, it's often detectable by the sound of it, the sound it makes when you put it on, and when you compare it to something that's newer or that's less utilized, there will be a sound difference. Think about vehicles. When you put a car on and it hasn't been serviced, the car's going to vibrate. It's going to make sounds that it shouldn't be making. And that's what we're listening for. That's why vibration analysis is so important. Okay. The next one is infrared thermography or thermography. And this is like taking machines' equipment. So what they do is they scan the machines and they look for hotspots. And often what they can do is they can find electrical faults. They can find that there's bearing wear or that there's insulation issues that need attention just by looking at what the temperature is of certain parts of the machine. So you know that machines are meant to hit a certain temperature. And if it goes above that, it will tell you that something's wrong. This is why on your dash in your vehicle, it tells you what the temperature of the car is, not because they want you to know how hot your car is. They tell you what the temp of the car is because if it gets too hot, then something's wrong. If it's too cold, then something's wrong too. If it's not heating up properly, there's a problem. Okay, just a little bit of an anecdote again on vehicles and temperature. There was a version of BMW that was brought to South Africa many years ago, more than 20, 25 years ago. They brought it to South Africa, and one of the problems they did was that this car was built in Germany, so it was built for that climate, for that weather. Hello, Confidence? Do you want to talk to me? Okay, just can we please all just manage our mics? Okay, it can be rather disruptive if you come in mid sentence. Okay, so as I was saying, so these BMWs were being imported from Germany, and they forgot to alter the heat settings for the vehicle or the temperature settings for the vehicle. So what had happened was the car was built and the temperature settings were set for the German climate. And then when they brought the car to South Africa without adjusting it for our climate, the car would overheat a lot. And they didn't recall them. They just let them roll. They rolled it out regardless. But a lot of people got stuck or they couldn't drive the car at certain times because it would just be too hot to drive. And that's why the temperature of your equipment, the temperature of your machines are very important. Okay, and they can be rather informative to there being a bigger problem. Okay, cool. Who knows what the average temperature of any vehicle should typically be before you use it? Because this is a general rule. I think it's just in the South African context. Okay, most vehicles, the bigger vehicles, they need to hit about, I think it's 90 degrees before you can, when they're optimal and ready for performance. Okay, and I'm talking about like it's probably your 2-liter engines and upwards. Okay, but yeah, that's just my experience. I haven't verified that. I believe based on my experience, I've noticed that a lot of vehicles hit 90 degrees before you can actually use it. Okay, let us keep going, which is actually quite hot if you think about it, but it makes sense, you know, it makes sense. Okay, let me keep going then. Then you have your oil analysis. So again, it's a great example with the vehicles, but a lot like this is a lot like blood tests for machinery. It analyzes the conditions of lubricants, revealing contamination, wear particles, or signs of degradation. Remember that machines need to be oiled, and the reason why is because it does help with ensuring that there isn't overheating, that the parts don't break down. It just keeps it running smoothly, which is very important. Okay. Then you have ultrasonic testing. So this is a technique that uses high frequency sound waves to detect hidden cracks or corrosion, or other flaws in the material, even if it's invisible to the naked eye. So again, this is you'd have to bring an expert in to help you. And I don't think it would ever be that. I don't think you'd ever need this unless you're working in a factory looking at a production line and trying to solve problems on the line. But again, it is one of the predictive maintenance techniques that exist. Okay, I'm going to keep moving in the interest of time. When we look at preventative maintenance strategies, we have a few other ones. So just scheduling your inspections and cleaning, so regularly checking on the equipment and keeping it clean. A lot of people don't think about the work or the policy development that goes into the scheduled inspections and cleanings of machines. And it is important. It's a very important practice. These policies need to be adopted or have to be, I want to say, adjusted every now and then, because your equipment does change. As equipment becomes more modern, maybe they would require less regular checks, but these things need to be considered and need to be altered based on how the equipment changes or advances. Okay, and then you have your lubrication of fluid changes. So proper lubrication is essential for reducing friction and the wear on your moving parts of the vehicles or whatever the equipment might be. Regular fluid changes ensure that the equipment operates at its best, and that's what we're looking for. We're just implementing preventative maintenance strategies to ensure that we are optimizing, or we're ensuring that whatever we're using is operating at its best. Okay. And then also component replacement. So you need to know that it doesn't matter what equipment you're using, there will be a need for component replacement. Now, I'll give you an example. We use printers a lot, and every now and then the printers become out of service because you need to replace a certain part or certain component. This is very important. These things are going to happen. And it's good to try and detect it before it does happen. The newer machines will tell you well in advance that this component is about to break. It's good that it does, because you can order it, and then as soon as it breaks, or as soon as it completely becomes it's no longer operational, then you can just replace the component and put a new one in. Okay, and then you have calibration and adjustment. So it's very important to make sure that your equipments are calibrated, that it's there and it has the accurate measurements for optimal performance. Sometimes your machinery could be adjusted, or there could be changes you can make to it. I mean, that's important, because then if you haven't calibrated to what your needs are, then you might be using the machinery incorrectly, and that's might not be the best for productivity. Okay, let's keep moving. So then when you look at maintenance, it's very important that you consider how technology could be incorporated in your maintenance management. It's important to note that technology is a powerful ally. And in the space of maintenance management, technology is becoming one of those important things that need to be incorporated or included in how you're managing equipment. So softwares and sensors can streamline the process, and it also can automate the process of data collection. It can provide you with valuable insights. So you'll see the first point, we have computerized maintenance management systems, so CMMSs. And what you should do is think of this as a central command center for maintenance. It will track work orders, it will track schedules, it will track tasks, it manages inventory, and it also will keep a detailed history on all your equipment. This is perfect. If you have history of it, if you're able to track everything that's happening around the equipment, then you know everything that could happen. You can be a lot more preventative, and you can be a lot more predictive with using the CMMS. Okay, and then you have IoT, which we have spoken about before. But these again are sensors, so they're smart devices that can be attached to the equipment that will help monitor the parameters in real time. So think about how a lot of the solar panels are being set up. A lot of them get these dongles that you attach to your box. The box I'm referring to is called, what is it called? I'm trying to remember the name. You have your solar panels, you have your, I can't remember right now. I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, it's a dongle that gets attached to the box. And what the dongle does is it collects data, real-time data based on the electricity production, electricity that's being drawn from the grid, and then electricity usage. And all of this data gets shared to mobile devices or even computers. And if there's downtime, it will tell you that there's X amount of downtime. And that's key. That's what you can do with predictive maintenance systems. You can keep track of your equipment to make sure that it's operating and producing the most for you. Okay. There is also a key thing that we need to consider as we go through this, but coordinating the two approaches. So successful maintenance isn't just about choosing between predictive and preventative maintenance. This is what I've been saying when we started talking about it, was you're not going to select one, you're going to try and use both. And what you're trying to do is you want to find a dynamic balance. We talk about this dynamic balance. We're talking about not using one more than the other, but using them hand in hand so that they can support your maintenance needs. So dynamic maintenance, this is where the magic happens. So it's all about real-time data from predictive tools to inform and adjust your preventative schedules. So if you use the data correctly, you can really build a schedule that makes sense. And a good way to think about it is to think about it like a dance. Predictive maintenance leads, guiding the preventative actions based on actual equipment condition. So because you're able to collect data from the equipment in the real world, you can make real world decisions based on their current conditions. It is flexible and it is also a responsive approach to maximize efficiency, which is the primary goal of maintenance management in the space of business advisory. Okay. The goal is to ensure that there is a seamless integration between both strategies and that you can create your dynamic maintenance systems that adapts to changing needs of the equipment, ensuring that your organization's productivity remains optimal and reliable. Okay, let us keep moving. An example of dynamic maintenance in action. So I just want to give you a bit of a scenario. So think about a manufacturing plant that implements a dynamic maintenance program for its critical conveyor system. So when we talk about conveyor system, we're talking about conveyor belts. Vibrator sensors detect abnormal patterns in one of the motors. So as a result of detecting this abnormal vibration or abnormal pattern in the vibration of one of the motors, it led to them actually opening it up and looking to see what's happening. So action. So instead of waiting for the scheduled preventative maintenance, the team acts proactively because they have the IoT sensor, the Internet of Things sensors on the conveyor system. They can tell that there's something wrong with the vibration of this one machine or this one motor. So they can open up, and as soon as they open it up, they find that there's a loose bearing. So they can replace it before it actually causes a major breakdown. So yes, the conveyor belt would have kept running with this minor issue, but it didn't have to. They didn't have to leave it to break down completely. They could be preventative. And what happens as a result is the plant avoids costly downtime, production delays, and demonstrating the power of this dynamic maintenance that we've been talking about today. So the other thing I'd like to say about dynamic maintenance, if we go back to the example, the scenario I provided here, um, if if the team doesn't deal with the small problems, with this this example, it's a loose bearing on one of the motors. Okay, the loose bearing is a small issue. You can fix it quickly. If you don't deal with it and you keep running the machine, you risk the likelihood of incurring greater damage to the motor. And instead of having to replace a bearing, you might have to replace an entire motor. And that is a problem. That is where it becomes more costly. And that's why we're advocating for dynamic maintenance, dealing with things as they pop up and not waiting for it to become bigger, because it will cost you money and it will lead to major breakdowns, which will cost you time, which is also, and we're not just talking about loss of money as a result of having to pay for a new motor. We're talking about loss of money as a result of not being able to operate. So you lose on all fronts because you weren't preventative. Okay, let us keep moving then. I hope that this example explains it, the dynamic maintenance in action. I hope that explains it in a nice way. It makes sense. Deal with things as they pop up, don't wait for them to become big, serious problems. Okay, the skills required to be in the space of maintenance coordination, it's a blend of technical expertise and business acumen. So again, as a business advisor, you don't have to know everything, but you have to have the individuals who are experts in the space of the machines or the equipment you're dealing with. So there needs to be technical knowledge of the equipment. So there needs to be someone who understands the assets and can help you work and to interpret the data that you're collecting to make informed decisions. Okay, then also you need to be able to do data analysis and to interpret them. So predictive maintenance generates a wealth of data. It will generate a lot of data. You need to have the skills to analyze it and to extract valuable insights. So you need to be able to tell what is really important and what is not, and then focus on what is important. Then also there needs to be communication and teamwork. Remember that maintenance is not something you'll do on your own. It literally takes a team to do it. So you need to effectively communicate findings and make the recommendation. It is also important to try and ensure that you have record of the recommendations that are being made, because it could form an important part of lessons learned. Okay. Then also you need to have the ability to problem solve and decision make. So unexpected challenges will arise. As I said to you, there are certain things you can plan for, other things not so much. You need the ability to think critically and find solutions quickly. You must be able to think on your feet, which is basically a skill that is required generally in the space of business or working in general. So yeah, very important. Okay, let us keep going. When we look at maintenance and business advisory, I always like to tie it back together to business advisory. Maintenance isn't just a technical function, it's also a strategic business driver. A well-maintained operation can significantly improve your or impact your bottom line. Remember, your bottom line is the profit. What is our profit margin? So financial impact. So remember, maintenance costs can represent a significant portion of your budget, but also effective management strategies can control the cost, even leading to savings. So if we're just cautious about it as we go through it, we can save some time, we can save some money. If you wait for things to completely break down, it will be more costly. Okay. Operational efficiency. So we're trying to avoid the downtime because it is a major productivity killer. It kills, time spent working, and it leads to less reliable equipment. So if you want your equipment to be reliable, make sure that you are proactive in maintenance. It will keep the operation running smoothly. Okay. And then other things to note that it is a core part or core component of risk management. So risk management is one of those modules you must have touched on in the process of doing this BA level 6. But yeah, it risk management does dabble on equipment failure, and it does lead to safety hazards. It can also lead to environmental damage and also regularity issues. So you can get into legal trouble for not doing the correct maintenance. So that's why you need to be proactive, because it mitigates these risks. Okay, and then finally, you have your customer satisfaction. So consistent product quality and on-time delivery will lead to greater levels of customer satisfaction. So poor maintenance can lead to delays and then customer dissatisfaction, obviously. So if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, customers will be unhappy. And that's just the simple nature of it. Okay. When we look at the maintenance advisor, I want you to think of it as a strategic partner. So today's maintenance professionals are not just technicians, they are strategic advisors. They'll bring valuable insight to the table and they'll help a business make informed decisions. So it's very important to note that your maintenance advisor will use data, and everything is data-driven recommendations. So everything they do is based off of data, trends, predictive failures, and they'll use this to make recommendations that would ensure that there is optimal maintenance strategies. There is also going to be cost benefit analyses, as there should be, because your cost benefit analyses will tell us what the impact would be of doing minor maintenance as opposed to the bigger ones. And it could also help to choose the most cost effective solutions when trying to deal with issues in the space of maintenance. Okay. There's also life cycle planning. So your maintenance advisors are going to look at how long you can use equipment for and look at their life cycles, looking at things they can do to extend the life cycle, or even how they can plan around equipment's running out of, reaching the end of the life cycle. And then finally, it also helps with continuous improvement. So if you consistently evaluate your maintenance program, you can find key areas where it might be lacking or might be falling short, and you can alter it. You can change the approach to improve efficiency and effectiveness. Okay. Yeah, two models that you can consider maintenance models. I shared this in the previous session, and a lot of students said that they don't feel like it's completely relevant to the space they work in. So I don't think it's completely necessary. It's not like you'll get asked questions on them, but it is important to note that you can build a maintenance process for your organization, and these are just examples that you can use to build those maintenance models. So you'll see that if we look at Tout's maintenance model, there's a change request phase. So you put in the request for change or for alteration. Then it will go through estimation. So then they'll look at what it would cost, what the timing or parameters would be. And then they'll take what they've gotten from the estimation phase and they'll push it over to scheduling. And remember your cost time, that will all contribute to scheduling it. And then you have your programming phase. So this is where you actually introduce the change, and then you test it, and then you document what you've done. Once you've documented, you can fully implement, which is release, and then it becomes operational. And if you need to redo it again, you'll follow the same sort of process. This is just a structured way of introducing change into a maintenance model. Again, it might not be applicable to all organizations. I think this is probably best for factories or manufacturing. But again, it's just a model. You're not going to get asked questions directly on the model. It's basically just there as a guiding point or starting point, something worth thinking about as you go through a maintenance. Okay, here's another one. This one just shows that you follow a cycle of getting changes approved, proposing them. So basically, what it says is you'll start with proposing the change, and then there'll be a management decision. There'll be there have to be approved changes. There'd also be some sort of evaluation that has to take place before and after the change has been implemented. Then you have the actual change implementation. So that is a key component. And then also you'll have your new version of software. This is very IT focused, but it's there. And then you also have your results. So what this model says is you'll follow cycles between doing these tasks. You might not always follow the same sequence of events, but all of these tasks will be completed before you start the new cycle. And that's what it is. The maintenance models, this one in particular, just says that you go through the cycle of making decisions, implementing changes, evaluating changes, checking the results, and then also having that implementation of the change. You'll go through the cycles of it in your maintenance, and it's just important to understand the cycle so that you can know where you are and what you're busy with at that current moment. Again, another model, just a perspective, a lens you can take on, that you can use when you consider maintenance, might not be applicable to all organizations or all contexts. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So I just want to recap some of the key points that we've discussed in this unit standard. So maintenance is crucial for efficiency and safety and also performance of an organization. There needs to be a balance between preventative and predictive approaches. There will be certain scenarios where you need to be reactive, but you want to minimize it as much as possible. And it's important to note that this unit standard focuses on both preventative and predictive. You need to also make sure that you're reaping benefits by reducing downtime, you're saving money, and also improving the safety for your employees. You can also use predictive tools to monitor your equipment for early warning signs. And then there are preventative tasks that you could introduce on a schedule that will address wear and tear. Technology enhances maintenance, just referring back to IoT or the CMMS that we spoke about. And then dynamic maintenance adapts strategies based on real-time data, which is very cool, taking data from the real world and making decisions based on that. There are skills needed to be in the space of maintenance management, so technical knowledge, data analysis, and communication. And then the last two are all about the impact of finance, operation risks, and customer satisfaction. Then maintenance advisors offer strategic guidance and support. So just a few recap points on this unit standard so far. So this does bring us to the end of the first unit standard. What I want to do is I want to take a bit of a break, let's just say about a 12-minute breather. We can all just step away and go get some coffee, water, tea, whatever it might be. And then we can come back and deal with the last unit standard for Module 7. Are we all good with that? Just give me a thumbs up. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, brilliant. So I will set the timer. Let me just go back and set our timer. Okay, wants to give you 2 minutes. Okay, there we go. So setting the timer, and we will come back in 12 minutes. I'll even have it play some music for you. Okay, are we all back? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I see that there's a couple comments in the chats. See that some people are struggling with the link. I'll reshare it. And then in terms of time, it's perfectly fine to select 9 o'clock. If that's the earliest time on the register, that's all right. It's more important that we have it registered that you actually attended. Okay, as long as your surname is there, it should be good. The time thing is not necessary, not entirely necessary. Okay, cool. I have reshared the link for the registered in the chat. Okay, cool. Let us commence with the next unit standard. This is our last unit standard for Module 7. And it is technically your last new unit standard you will be dealing with for BA Level 6. And yeah, in the FISA, they don't introduce any new unit standards. It's all based on the previous ones that you've done. So yeah, this is a big deal. Let's get started with a bit of a quote from Henry Ford. So if you don't know who Henry Ford is, he is the gentleman that started Ford Automobile. And he was very strategic about how he managed most things. For example, he would and back in the day, initially Ford would only come in one color, and the color was black because the black paint would dry faster, and that was just one of the ways he optimized his own manufacturing line. But anyway, he came up with this quote that said, "The only thing worse than the only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay." And Henry Ford was of the belief that working with untrained employees is worse than working with ones that aren't trained. And that's the message he was carrying forward. Is it's important to train employees. Having an employee trainees that might leave makes them more valuable. Is what he was trying to carry forward in this message. And that's what we're going to talk about in this next unit standard, is training and development. We will dabble a bit on the manufacturing, but not as much. I try to minimize it in this particular unit standard. But it's literally, the title of this unit standard is to manage skills, training, and development within a team in a manufacturing unit. Okay, that is the title of the unit standard. Let's go to a bit of an introduction to the unit standard. You'll see that in today's fast-paced manufacturing or even the workplace environment, the skills and knowledge of the workforce is the most important or valuable asset. So what our employees know and what they can do is a very valuable asset to an organization. Effectively managing these skills and providing ongoing training that can foster continuous development is essential for achieving operational excellence and staying competitive. So an organization is only going to be as good as its employees are. And this is where the unit standard 10604 will come in, and we'll talk about, training and development of our employees. Again, it's very important to note that this unit standard is all about defining competencies that range from managing skills, training, development needs, and in a team context. I like to focus on the team components of the unit standard. And you can always allude back to other models, such as like Tuckman's model, where you can look at team building. But yeah, it covers everything from identifying skills gaps to designing training programs and evaluating their effectiveness. You'll see that we're going to talk quite a bit about doing a gap analysis. And then the goal of this is to equip managers with the tools and knowledge to build high-performing, adaptable workforces that can meet challenges of the modern world. Now, what I want to say about this is, when you come in as a business advisor, there will be typically 4 key areas that you need to focus on when you're advising. The 4 key areas would be, it could either be systems, a systems issue, or an area that needs to be addressed in the space of organizational systems. It could be technology, So technology is one of the hot key components of an organization. It could be innovation. Sometimes organizations lack innovation or inspiration to do anything creative. Or finally, it could be people. And this is where this comes in, this unit standard. Sometimes we'll go to an organization as a business advisor, and you'll notice that there's a people problem. And this people problem needs to be addressed. You can't, sometimes the problem lies with the people, not with the technology, not with the innovation, not with the systems. Everything is there, but it's misaligned to the people within the organization. And that's what we're looking for. That's what we want to discuss in this unit standard. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So this slide is all about why skills management matters. So remember that your organization is going to continuously be evolving because technology is rapidly moving. Processes are evolving even faster, and skilled workforce can help in the process of quickly adapting and learning these new techniques, these new approaches. We've seen that the world is moving at even a faster rate than what it had ever moved before. We're seeing technology advancements are just getting, it's getting insane. We have humanoids, that are being developed. So it's robotic humans, or like, I don't want to say robots are humans, but it's robots that are meant to look like humans and operate and walk and do things as well as a human being would. These things are going to revolutionize the workspace. They're going to change things. I don't know if it's for the better or worse. That's subjective. It's up to you how you feel about it. But the things are changing, and skills management matters as a result of this change. Okay. The other reason why skills management matters is because we want to improve performance. Okay. Well-trained employees are just more efficient. They make less errors and they contribute to higher quality products. They'll contribute to the overall picture, the overall quality that the organization produces. And this is important. Okay. Another thing is it boosts morale. So investing in employees, investing in their development, their growth, shows that you value them, that you see them as important. And this could lead to increased job satisfaction and further increased engagement. Okay. And then the last point I have here is about attracting talent. So companies with strong training programs are more likely to attract new potential employees. And you're also likely to attract employees that are of a certain nature that could be beneficial to the organization. So that's why it matters. Okay. When we go through the skills management cycle, it's very important to note that you'll follow the following steps. You'd have to start by assessing your current situation. What is the current skills? Once you've assessed the current situation, you can start looking at the future and where you want to go. What is the path? What is the direction we want to head in as an organization? And this is where you'd start identifying your future needs. So you were looking at now, we're looking at where we want to go. And what we will see is there'd always be a gap between where we are now and where we should be. And once you know what the gap is, you can start planning, which is our next point, to bridge these gaps or to address these gaps, which is very important. So what kind of skills will we need to remain operational in the next 5 to 6 years? That's what we're referring to in the space. Then once you've developed your plan, you start delivering your training, you start implementing. So deliver training, provide mentoring, and create opportunities to practice the application of what you've delivered or what you've presented. And then evaluate. So measure the effectiveness of the training and its impact on performance. So you want to know that what you've presented to your trainees is helping them. That will, it's something that revolutionizes, or it's something that further enables them to do what they need to do better. What we've noticed with our skills development cycle, because we have one within the RH organization, there are still many areas or lots of room for improvement, and there are some interesting changes we're going to implement in the next year. Actually, in the new year, I should say, that will further enhance the quality and make things easier for learners. And that's actually what we want to do, is we want to make it as easy as possible for learners to do their assignments. We do acknowledge the fact that we can be a little more adaptable, a little more flexible in our approach. So there will be key changes that we are addressing. And if you happen to be one of the students that gets placed on another program after this one, you'll be able to see the changes that get implemented. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. So let's go back to the skills gap. And there are many different ways you can do a skills gap. But the easiest one is to start with a skills audit. So this is a review of all the employees you have and their current skills levels. Where do they sit? And what is their, how do we measure them in terms of a skills level? And then you have your performance reviews. So this is another way to do it. So feedback from supervisors and peers can highlight areas of improvement. Performance reviews need to happen regardless of whether you're doing a skills gap analysis or not. It's very important that it does happen. Okay, and then you have observations, so you can always just watch your employees or watch the people that report to you, and just to see what they do when, to identify the strengths and weaknesses. There is a problem with just adopting the observational approach. If they know you're watching, it will alter how they perform, because people don't work exactly the same when they know they're not being watched, or they know that they are being watched. It does alter. This is called the Hawthorne effect. And in research, the Hawthorne effect is, it just says the presence of the person collecting the data can affect the outcome. It can introduce a bias, which is important to note. The next way to identify skills gaps is through surveys and interviews. So gather input from employees. What are their training needs? Where do they think things should go? And then remember that skills gaps can be technical. So it could be about how well they operate a machine, or how well they use a particular system, or it could be soft skills. So how well they communicate with each other, how well they solve problems, their critical thinking. All of these are different soft skills. Okay, cool. I see we have a hand. Ponsa, what's happened?
Yes. Hi, Carl. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to check if I heard you correctly when you mentioned that employees can be watched in action, so that an employer can identify what skills or what can be improved in their skill set. Um, did you allude to the fact that once people are observed in action, they might not act as, like, that feeling when you're being watched and then you start panicking? Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's 100% what I was alluding to. That's called the Hawthorne effect. So naturally, when you go and you watch employees, you're technically a researcher and you're watching them do what they would do. But with the Hawthorne effect, it was an investigation into factory employees, and then what they'd noticed was the complete opposite of what you're thinking. Ponzo, what do you think happened to the factory workers when the researchers were there watching them? You're muted.
Yeah, I wanted to check with you what the spelling is.
Okay, so it is Hawthorne, so H. I'll put it in the chat. But what do you think would happen, or what do you think happened to those factory workers when they were being watched by the researchers? Okay, I think Manhav is coming in to save you. What happened, Manhav?
Naturally, I think the factory workers would instantly try to work better, trying to show that, they sort of, how can I put this, to show that they are supposed to be there, like, they deserve a place in the factory, and they make a difference in the factory. Naturally, like, if you're being watched, you're going to be self-conscious about everything that you do. You're going to, I don't know, sit upright, just because, somebody's watching you, you're going to try and act, and I say loosely, proper, so, yeah.
Yeah, so that is 100% correct. You're going to push a little harder. You're going to show that you're the best possible employee, that, I'm the best possible hire for this job. But what they noted at Hawthorne is it didn't matter whether they fixed the lighting, whether they increased the airflow within the factory, whether they made it a nicer place to be at. Those things, yes, it made the factory workers happy, but it didn't last long. Like after a week or two, they didn't care about it anymore. The thing that was really impactful was actually the researchers being there and supervising them. What they'd noticed was that the factory workers felt more valued because they were being observed. They felt that people care enough to come and look at what they're doing. And it's not in that context, it wasn't viewed as such a negative thing. But what it does mean is if you are trying to collect data, or you're trying to look at something objectively, your presence as an individual will have an influence on those who are being supervised or observed. And that can be a problem because it will skew the outcome. You're not going to get an honest reflection of what happens when you're not there. So alternatively, if you don't want to be physically there watching people, when no one's around, sorry, Ponzo, you're muted.
I was wondering if you're gonna talk about surveillance. So,
Yeah, literally.
like, would it help to get an honest reflection of the worker output if, say, cameras are placed just so they can be observed in action without a physical presence of a person?
That is 100%, but then you need to justify the cameras because people also will feel a bit like, I think the cameras must be put in well in advance of the observation. So maybe put the cameras in 3 months before you want to do the observation. Because if you put the cameras in today and you start doing the observation tomorrow, you're not going to get a true reflection. People are going to be wary about the fact that there's a camera now where there wasn't one before. Yeah, we're very sensitive. That's what I'm picking up here. I'm sure we can all agree that it's quite tricky to observe human beings. Yeah. And the other thing is when we're looking at doing research with younger kids, for example, you can't just go and talk to kids and be like, hey, how do you feel about this concept? Because as a stranger, there's another. It actually lends itself to the Hawthorne effect. You're going to get very limited responses from younger kids or younger individuals because they're inclined to act a certain way with strange people. And that is, again, another research phenomena that needs to be addressed. And I come up with a solution, or I came up with a solution. I think that the best way to approach those types of observations or investigations would be to have a trusted adult actually conduct the observation. Because the kids would be most comfortable with those individuals. But yeah, this is one of the things we deal with in research often, quite often. And I like it. It's one of my favorite things to tackle, is to come up with innovative solutions to roll out a study or research. And I hope to do more of that in the future. Okay, cool. So I'm diverging a little, but yes, observation is an important tool that you can use in watching employees to get an idea in terms of strengths and weaknesses. This observation could also be when they're using equipment. I did this once with one of our facilitators. I had doubts about whether she could use a computer, and I thought to myself, like, if I bring her into my office and I ask her to do certain things, it would give me a true measure of whether she can do things. But not only, I didn't tell her that I was observing her to see whether I'd keep her or not, but I didn't care about the fact that I was there and I put her in this very uncomfortable position. The reason why I thought it was okay is because when you're a facilitator, you're going to be put on the spot. You need to be able to deal with things on the fly, and you're not always going to be comfortable with some of the challenges. So that's why I thought, in this situation, the observation can occur this way. So in certain contexts, you can test your employees. You can put them in uncomfortable situations where the pressure is applied, and that's okay. But if in other contexts, if you want a true reflection of how they perform without that added pressure on a normal day-to-day basis, then don't apply the pressure. Then you have to put a camera in, or there has to be a more strategic approach to dealing with it. Okay, let's go to the next way to identify skills gaps. That it could simply be done through surveys and interviews. So gathering inputs from employees from their perceived training needs. Sometimes your employees would know best what they need. I'll give an example. A lot of my team has requested to become assessors and eventually to down the pipeline to become moderators. And they know that these are things they need because it's the only way they can really advance in the space of facilitation, education, and training. So they know that this is core to their career pathing. And a lot of employees would know this already. They know what the next thing they need is to progress. For me, the next thing would be probably the PhD, but that's core, that's critical to my growth as an individual. Yeah, that's that your employees would know what they need to do next. Yeah, and then just remember that skills gaps can be technical, as I said before. It could be operating a machine, or it could be soft skills. So how well they communicate with each other, how well they solve problems, how well they make decisions, critical thinking, any of those components. Okay, let me move on. When we look at designing effective training programs, it isn't just about sharing information. It's not just about delivering information. It's more about facilitating learning and ensuring that there's a transfer of skills. Okay, let me ask the group a question when it comes to training and designing content. Who has ever heard of the concept of andragogy and pedagogy? Some of us who studied should know or should have heard about it before. If not, it's okay. I just want to check. They're nice technical words. Okay, it seems like not many of us are comfortable with this. Just checking. Okay, so I will explain it. So andragogy is a study that is built around adult learning or adult education. It literally consists of all these theories that could be adopted in the process of educating adults. Okay, when you look at pedagogy, it's the same thing, but it's only for young kids, young individuals. So it's for children, teenagers, and a young child, basically. And what you'll see is there's a key difference between andragogy and pedagogy. Okay, in the space of pedagogy, you will find that there are a lot more theories that are built around conditioning. And there's a key reason why they've included conditioning in the pedagogical theories, is because when a child is sent to school, they need to be conditioned. And the reason why they are being conditioned is because the only way you can operate or live in society as a productive member of society is by following the rules. So when a kid goes to school, they have to be at school by 8 o'clock. They'll have their first break at 10, they have their second break at 12, they leave at 2:30. And they follow this routine every day. They have their classes, they have their teacher, they have certain ways, they need to engage with each other. And yeah, so then that is all a part of their conditioning. And they also get taught that if you do things wrong, there are punishments. There are, you can get punished for making mistakes. If you don't do this, you will fail. That's all a part of their conditioning. And then the big difference in andragogy and in adult education is that you don't have conditioning, or there are one or two theories that are all about conditioning, but most of them are more about opening the opening learning so that it could be more creative, it could be more open-ended. It's more about your thoughts, your feelings. What do you think is important? And there's less about conditioning and more about you owning your learning journey. And I'm sure a lot of us have noticed that this shift that happens when you are when you move from high school to higher education, and then that shift is important. They open it up. There are less parameters. It's more open-ended. You're allowed to make decisions about your learning. Even the way the questions are posed. For example, with our BA program, we have memorandums for the work, but because of the nature of the questions, not there aren't always just right answers. Sometimes you could read an answer that is still correct, but not on the memorandum. And that kind of openness is required when dealing with adult education. Okay, things need to be applicable to different contexts, and that's what I'm alluding to. So a well-designed program considers both the content and also the delivery methods. So because we're doing online, this content has been built specifically for this. And I'm sure you've noted that a lot of our slides can be a bit wordy, or there's a lot more information than what I like. But personally, I believe eventually the slides become a part of the guide, and they become rather informative. So that's why we've stacked it with more information than what you typically would. But if this was presented in a face-to-face format, it would have less information, and it would require more of me as the presenter to remember all the content and to talk about it without even looking at the slides. It would play behind me, and then I'd be, standing in front of you talking. But the other thing I'd like to say about that is it doesn't help the face-to-face learners as much as it does help the online learners, because face-to-face learners get the slides that are, that have the bullet pointed or the summary version of the information I spoke about as the lecturer. but it doesn't help them when they're not with the lecturer. So then what's the point? Oh yeah, and then another thing that is becoming important in designing effective training programs is that you have synchronous and asynchronous learning. So another concept that has emerged as a result of COVID-19 and this massive shift to online learning is the concept of synchronous and asynchronous learning. So synchronous learning just means we're all in sync, we're in a class together, we're talking about concepts, we're sharing, we're chatting, and information is flowing. Then asynchronous is where you watch a recording on your own, you go through the content by yourself, you deal with the questions yourself. That's it's self-study and also a mix of face-to-face and studying together. That is key to designing programs nowadays. So if you want to design a program, you need to start with the needs analysis. We've gone through this so many times, but it is the foundation of any program. And a thorough needs analysis will provide you with key understanding of what specific skills need to be addressed in the training. There's no point in just doing the training because you think it would be fun to do. It needs to be of value to the participants, to the trainees that will be there in the training. Okay, it also needs to have learning objectives. So clearly define what the objectives are and provide a roadmap for where the participants are going to go and what they will be doing from the start to the end of the program. Okay, so in your BA level 6 program, you have been provided with a roadmap. If you remember the induction section or session, I showed you the modules. I showed you that you'll be doing these 7 modules and then you'll have your feast at the end. We are like right at the end of this roadmap, but it's good. It's nice. It's nice to have reached this point in the program. It's probably the best part is actually, once you're starting it and then wrapping it up. And then there is always a point in the middle where I think everyone has the same doubt, where they're like, am I going to make it? Am I going to finish this? And it's a real question. It's a test of will and determination. Am I going to really pull this off? All of us go through it. It doesn't matter what the program is. It could be a level 6. It could be a degree. It could be an honors. It doesn't matter. I find that it doesn't matter what you're doing. You always hit that halfway mark and you're like, can I really pull this off? Yeah, and then you have your content development. So the training content should be engaging. It should also be relevant. We try to make sure that stuff is updated, that it's as new as possible, but also at the rate of information and how it grows and develops, it's very difficult to make sure you have the most recent content. So either you become an expert on a specific field and you can update it continuously, or you do your very best to do annual updates to the material. You want to consider a mix of formats such as presentations, demonstrations, hands-on exercises, case studies, group discussions, and you also want to try and cater for different learning styles, because you need to understand that when you develop the training material, you are going to deal with people who learn in vastly different manners, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly normal. Okay. When you do your training delivery method, it's important to choose the right training delivery method, because this would, it will have an impact on how engaging it is or how much knowledge is actually retained as a result of the training. You also have your classroom training. So this is your traditional method, which is a face-to-face. It is having a structured environment for learning with opportunities for groups to interact, and you also get immediate feedback from the learners as you do it. Then you have your online training, which is what we're doing here. It's e-learning training modules, which provides a lot more flexibility and convenience. So a lot of us can sit at home, we can sit in our pajamas, we can, have our cup of coffee. And if there's an emergency, you need to attend to a phone call quickly, not a big issue. You can step away, take a call, come back. I'm sure some of us have had to do that, and it does happen. It's perfectly normal. But the online e-learning mode of delivery really makes it a lot more easier for it's at your convenience. It's a lot more flexible. You don't have to drive to a physical venue and then go and sit in a room for the whole day. The other thing is, this last 2 hours you could have been in class for the whole day today. I think that this is a lot more beneficial to you and your time. It also allows employees to learn at their own pace, so you are required to put a lot more effort in when you do the online learning, because what happens outside of the training sessions are completely on you as the learner. But then also you have access to materials from anywhere. So you can also go to online sources. You can go to Google searches to find info. It's a lot more open. It's a lot more flexible. Okay. Then if we look at the training delivery methods, again, you also have on-the-job training. So this is hands-on approach where you actually give people the equipment to use. And sometimes this is very useful. So for example, if you're learning how to drive, you want to have a hands-on experience with the vehicle. You can't go into your drivers without having driven a vehicle. It's one of those things where you learn better by just doing. And this could be very effective in other technical skills development areas. So just think about that. Then you have mentoring and coaching. So this is pairing experienced employees with less experienced ones to foster that knowledge transfer and provide personalized guidance. This is of the utmost importance. Knowledge shouldn't just sit with one individual. And you'll see that at the Infomage and RIMS organization, we've been making a concerted effort to make sure that you don't have singular individuals who know what's happening in one specific field or in certain areas of the organization. So we're trying to do it in such a way that if one person is absent for whatever reason it might be, there is at least another person who can carry it forward. And that's important, okay? Working in pairs, making sure that you have your mentors, your coaches, guiding people. And then also as a mentor, it's important to note that you're not just going to be there helping with the actual training. As a mentor, you'll help individuals with work-related issues. You'll help them with other personal issues. You don't have to. Like sometimes things pop up. We are human beings. We like to connect with each other. I find myself as a mentor to many others. I find myself often having to deal with work-related and also non-work-related issues. And I think it's interesting, but it's good for them. It's good for me. We all learn from each other in that process. Okay. Let us keep going. Then when you actually do the training, you need to evaluate to see how effective it is. So when you want to test effectiveness, you can use the following points. So you want to check for reaction. So gather feedback from the participants to see how satisfied they are with the training. This is something I've done, and I'm going to keep trying to do with the RHE and what we do with our learning. I will share some surveys. I have shared surveys before, but I'll share them again. I want to collect data. I want to see how you feel. And they will be anonymous, so you can answer honestly. We want some real feedback to see what we can do to further enhance and improve the product that we're presenting, because that is what this is. It's a product. It's a service at the end of the day. You also want to test the learning. So assess how much knowledge and skills were acquired through tests, quizzes, and practical demonstrations. That is what we do with our formatives and summatives. And then you have your behaviors. So observe if any employees are applying the new knowledge and skills on the job. That is always the best part of doing something. So I'll give you an example. There was a particular individual I work very closely with now, that when she first started working with me, she on the day I said to her, I want you to be the second in charge, and we had to do with delegation of work. And I remember she came with the list of the classes and the list of employees, and she said to me, how should we delegate? I just said, figure it out. And then she did it. She delegated the work, and then it was perfect. She did it very well. And then what I'd noticed was that she was very good at it. And like a week later, I was out of the office. I was in Cape Town, and this very task popped up again to delegate. And she just delegated. Didn't have to call me. Didn't have to WhatsApp. Didn't have to email. The tasks were delegated. The team had the work. They did the work. And that sort of approach is brilliant, because what I'd noticed was just by allowing her to do it once, she'd do it again, and the team wouldn't have to get stuck because I wasn't present. So it was great to see this change in behavior and this just taking charge of this core function. It was brilliant to see it. That's what you want to do. You want to see that employees are applying the new knowledge, the new skills they've obtained, and it's actually good for the organization. It's beneficial. Okay, and then finally you have results. So measure the impact of the training on the overall performance. So think about productivity, quality, and safety. These are key areas, and you can literally just do a little test again, assessing how much knowledge and skills are acquired, to see what the results are, to measure, to see where people stand in terms of their knowledge retention. Okay. And then you also want to foster a culture of continuous development. So a lot of people think once they get a degree, they won't need to study ever again. That is not a good way to approach academics or learning in general. If you want to get ahead of the curve, you need to make sure that you're continuously learning. You need to build this mindset and see that lifelong learning is important. Employees need to be encouraged to explore new ideas. They need to always be looking to obtain new skills. Then my latest fad obsession is the short these short programs. You can do short programs that Harvard offers. And I just think I want to do one because it would look really good on the CV. Those sort of things are brilliant. The other thing I was looking at doing is releasing or publishing articles. So every 6 weeks, I think I could publish a single article. And that would also be very good for the CV, very good for marketability of myself. And those are the types of things you need to think about. You need to be curious, out there exploring, looking at where you can go with your next big thing. And then also provide resources. So make learning material readily available, whether it's online courses, books, or industry publications. Share information. Don't be shy about it. We live in a world where information is growing at a rapid rate. Might as well share it. Let people know what's happening. Let them know what's up. Okay. And then if you continue, share results. So measure the impact of the training on the overall performance, and such as productivity, quality, and safety. And it's very important that you actually give people results. Sometimes people do training and then they don't provide the results. This was a mistake we used to make at IRG, is people wouldn't get feedback for the work they do. They'd submit via email, and then you'd have to email back results. And that process of typing up an email saying you got 50% for formative, it just takes time, and we needed systems in place that would automatically share that information with learners. That's why we adopted the classrooms, the Google Classrooms. And that's what's important. That's what we're looking for, is you want to give people feedback to know where they stand, how they can further improve and grow as an individual. The other thing is you need to celebrate achievements. So when people do well, give them a round of applause, be excited for them. When I told the team at RIG that I'm graduating for the masters, the reaction I got was overwhelming. It was absolutely beautiful. They get what a big achievement it is, and they were very happy. They were like, saying they're going to come to the graduation. They were like, round of applause and all of that. That is just brilliant. That's what you want. You need to celebrate the big victories. And remember that my victory is not just my victory, it's everyone's victory. We're a team. We work together, And then lead by example. So if you're a manager, you should be committed to the learning. So if you have a team working for you, show them that this is what I'm studying, this is what I'm doing. Be open and honest about it. There's nothing wrong with pursuing academics and further enhancing yourself as an individual, but also set the tone for the entire team. Let them know that we're all about continuous development and learning. And you should, as an individual, be thinking about these things. That's the kind of message you want to send to your team. Okay. There are many models you can use in the process of developing content. One of the most popular ones would be AD. So AD just says that you need to analyze and be curious. What are the business objectives? What are the learning needs? What are the current capabilities looking like? And then once you've done the analysis, you can go and start designing, where you can be creative. What combinations of engaging methodologies work well together? What will the end-to-end learning experience look and feel like? What are the specific learning objectives and how will they be achieved? And then once you're done designing it, which is you just mapping it out and developing a picture of what it will look like, you can start developing. So get a pilot ready, and when you say get a pilot ready, have a draft version of the materials that you can give to various stakeholders to get feedback from. Once you're done developing, you can actually start implementing. And then once you dive in and you start implementing, you can think about how we can support facilitation, to upskill and deliver the program. And then also how will leaders be engaged in this program. Once you're done implementing, you evaluate. You never just stop at implementation. You always need to look back and reflect. Are we hitting the mark? Have the learners been shifted in their skills, their knowledge, their behavior? And what can we do differently? That is the big thing that I've been asking myself a lot at the RIG organization. Is there anything we can do differently? And I never get the answer, no, everything's perfect. I always think this can be altered, this can be improved, this can be changed. And that's important. That continuous growth, continuous development is what it's all about. So this is just the AD model. And it's used to design material and design training programs. So it's a thought process worth considering if you had to deal with the task of developing training content. Okay, this is just explaining what I've already explained, so I'm going to move past it. We have Bloom's taxonomy, and Bloom's taxonomy is it's quite an old theory, and it's been used a lot in the development of questions and content for learners. But Bloom's taxonomy just says that you need to develop questions that tackle the following nature of questions. So you always start at the bottom. You start with remembering. Remembering is the most primary form of learning. It's the parrot learning testing to see whether you can remember certain things. And it's good. It's more traditional learning that would follow that. Then once you're done with remembering, you'd move to the next step, which would be developing understanding. So not just only remembering and parroting, but can you show me that you understand the concepts? Once you understand it, you take it a step further and you start applying it. So not just understanding, but also applying. Once you've applied it, you take it a step further and you analyze. So you've applied it now. Let's look at what you've done. Let's break it down and see what the result was as a result of your application. Once you've analyzed, you can evaluate the different parts of how you've broken it down. And once you've done the evaluation, you can create. You can start creating your own models, your own theories, your own approaches to certain things. And I've noticed that if you go up the NQF level, this creation component becomes more important as you go up. So I've literally wrapped up NQF 9, and something I did a lot of was create different models, different models, different figures, different diagrams that could be applied to RLG or different organizations. Some of the models I've created, one of my lectures, I created one for management of people. It was a beautiful model. I'm still obsessed with it. I actually put it in a write-up I did recently. But I submitted the assignment. I literally got 100% for the assignment. But the lecturer said to me that the model I developed is actually worth publishing because of how it incorporates different other models and how it is specific to RG, but also applicable to different organizations. That's important. So what you'll see is as you climb levels, as you keep upskilling, the requirement to create is going to become more important. Okay, this is basically Bloom's taxonomy. When you're starting to develop training material, you always start at the bottom and work your way up to the top. Okay, it doesn't matter what the NQF level is. You always start with remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Okay, so let me just go. So this just explains Bloom's taxonomy. I'm not going to go through it again. Then you have the 70-20 model. I have a visual representation of it that is better. So I'm going to just look at this. So the 70-20 model just is it's a human resource learning and development model. And it just says that learning can be broken down into these three categories. It says that 70% of your learning it comes from workplace experience or experiential learning. So this model just says that you learn the most from doing. So and I honestly agree with the model. I think that you learn more by doing than by listening. Okay, how many of us, you can raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if you agree with what I'm saying. How many of us feel like we've learned more from actually doing the assignments than what we do from sitting in the sessions? Okay, Manhav says yes. Anyone else? Okay, Sylvester, yeah, Monica. Very interesting. Cool. Yeah, so I feel like that would be the general consensus, is we typically learn more from doing than what we do from sitting and listening to someone talk about the stuff, which is unfortunate because that's what we do a lot here in the online sessions. Thankfully, they're only 2 hours. There's 2 hours of me discussing content, and there's several more hours of you actually going and doing your assignments. Then it says that 10% of the learning comes from formalized learning, which is what we're doing here, structured learning. And then 20% comes from informal learning. So where you go and you have conversations about the particular model, the topic of the day, or whatever it might be. It's just where you're talking to people about what you've learned, so you have discussions about the content. This happens a lot in my space. People always ask me questions about content, and social learning occurs. But 70% of it comes from the workplace training or the experiential, the doing part. Okay, cool. This is the 70-20-10 model. Also very interesting, worth considering. Let me move on. So it's just a little bit of a recap on this last unit standard for the BA level 6. So skills management is essential. It can help you identify current and future skills needs, and also is there to help you design targeted training, implement them effectively, and evaluate the impact of said training. It also says that training matters, which is what I like to advocate for. You want to create engaging programs, you want to choose appropriate delivery methods, and you want to measure the results to make sure that we're hitting the target. And then finally, you want to foster a learning culture. So you want to encourage curiosity, you want to make sure you're providing people with resources, you want to celebrate achievements, and you want to lead by example as a business advisor. Okay. Just to conclude, by mastering these 2 unit standards, you're not just learning about maintenance and team development, but you're also becoming an architect of a thriving organization, you're embracing the power of proactive maintenance, and also you're ensuring that equipment can run smoothly and efficiently, while also investing in continuous growth and development of your team so that they can unlock their full potentials. Remember that the knowledge and actions today are built, or are the building blocks of a brighter future for tomorrow. So I hope that you'll go forth and create the change you'd like to see. Okay, with that being said, that does bring us to the end of today's session. We have ended 5 minutes earlier. I don't know if we have any questions. I will not be covering the formative and summative. I feel like it is module 7. It's the last module. You should all be comfortable tackling these questions by yourself at this point. Is there any, I see there's a comment in the chat. So Bonsa says, my experience with the course is to be present in classes and then go find businesses to apply your learnings to. So far, I have engaged in several small businesses in the township I am situated in, and I'm looking to expand to engaging bigger businesses and diversify my reach. That is brilliant, Bonsa. I think that at some point our team must reach out to you. I'd like to have a one-on-one discussion about your experience and what you found in reaching out to these smaller businesses. Let's have a conversation about it and see what we can do about making that more, celebrating that achievement, because that's very important. Okay, Ponce, yeah.
I just wanted to add. So I do share some of my findings on my YouTube channel. I find that it's a good way to document whatever it is that I think up and I try to implement. But I'm happy to engage one-on-one. Thanks.
Brilliant. So just, yeah, well, I'll reach out. I'll drop you an email. We'll talk about it. Okay. Are there any other questions, any other queries we want to address before we end the session up, or are we all good? Just give me a thumbs up if you're happy. Okay, I see that. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to take the silence as golden. The silence is good. It's a literally a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of situation. What I want to say is we will commence with the FISA in Feb next year. So you will have a little bit of a break, which is good. And then when you come back for that FISA, just be ready, because it's going to be a lot of work. And then once the FISA is done, there will be nothing else you need to do for your BA level 6. We will then work on ensuring that you are assessed, moderated, and exited to be certified for the program. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Take care.
Thanks, Carl. You too. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Carl. Also enjoy.
Will do. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Carl. Bye.
Thanks, Monica.
Bye, Carl.
Thanks,
Bye.
Minnie, Monica. Awesome. Bye, Patson. Okay, I'm going to end the meeting off.